Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Robert Show. This is episode 2 of the GenAI Playbook Enterprise Edition, and you might have already seen the edition 1. And now we are, obviously going to discuss today about various topics, but very important topic, which is what every enterprise is actively working on, how GenAI combined with real customer data is changing the customer service. So I'm excited to chat about that, chat about chatbots, virtual agents, digital assistants, and how they are improving fast. But the real value shows up only when AI is connected to the right data in real time and at scale. So I have two experts coming in. Obviously, my very good friend Ronin, who will also be a co-host on this one. Let me bring him on stage. Ronin, welcome to the Robert Show again. Super excited to have you on the Enterprise series.
Hi, Ravit. Thanks for the opportunity to join you here. And yes, we do have an exciting topic. And everybody, happy holidays as well.
Yes, happy holidays, everyone. And also, it's time for me to invite a very interesting guest that we have had on the show earlier as well, but a very good friend and a leader in this data and AI space. Miguel, you're back, not a new face to the Ravit show, but I'm going to ask for a quick intro just for my audience to know what has changed in your life. And I know you're always out there to help the community and share your experiences from various industries. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And Ronin, I would love for you to introduce yourself as well.
Thanks so much for having me again, Rabbit. Again, happy holidays to everyone else that's listening here. For those that don't know me, Miguel Navarro. I used to work for State. I used to work for TD Bank. When I was in TD Bank, I was the head of voice and emerging platforms, and then transitioned into KeyBank, where I was the head of conversational AI technology. I became the head of client identity verification and authentication. And then now currently I sit as the head of applied emerging technologies, which again, Rabbit, Ronan, great to be here. Super happy that you folks have me. I'm super honored and privileged to be here again on the show.
Thanks, Miguel. Ronin, tell us about what's happening at K2View and a little bit about yourself, please.
Yes. So Ronnie Schwartz, the CEO in K2View, and I'm really happy to join Miguel here, and really exciting role that you have. And I'll say to everybody, I think 2025 have been an amazing, exciting years to all of us in technology. I think from K2V, also from a business perspective, it's been a year of growth, and year of a lot of innovation, like getting customers to basically leverage data in new ways, whether these new ways are basically in the space that they've already been implementing data. Like we have a lot of customers that have used test data management, and now they're using synthetic data for test data management, but also in completely new use cases. If I take even the synthetic data that we just talked about, then synthetic data to train models, to basically implement new scenarios. And I think the chatbot is one of my favorite, or conversational interfaces is one of my favorite areas. Something we implement internally, but also we support customers in leveraging what they know about the customer in the backend system and implementing conversational interfaces. So I think really an exciting year and a lot of new stuff.
Yes, for sure. I always tell my audience, and also when I meet enterprise leaders as well, I always say I feel I'm in the most interesting space, and we all are in the most interesting times that we are seeing something which is definitely game changer, but also it is something which will change our lives in better ways possible. I'm going to jump to Miguel for this question and to set the context. Miguel, what are you thinking when it comes to synthetic data, chatbots, and also the Gen AI initiatives? Because I know you and your team have been working around it, and a lot of customer service kind of work you all have been doing. So tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are, and then we can get into the detailing of chatbots, virtual assistants, and pilot to production challenges and all of those things as well.
Yeah, the first thing I'll mention is Ronan and team, right? Like building synthetic data prior to generative AI, right, was not as easy I say easy, like that's a opinion, just because it's not factual. Because and I'll go into it like in a little bit more, but I'd say like it was not as easy prior to generative AI because it was a lot of manual work. And post
Hmm.
AI, I think this is where easy becomes a funny word, because there's a lot of companies out there that generate synthetic data, but the synthetic data that they're generating, just like the data that you would want in your organization, is it enterprise ready? Is it friendly to the regulatory landscape that you're in, depending on what industry you're in? So to me, synthetic data has become very important, at least in the innovation space for me, because for the most part, data for you, you create a proof of concept, you create an application, whatever it is that you do, you would need data to run that, right? I mean, like an application without data doesn't really do much, right? Like, so the way that
Right.
the way that I like put it in is, well, how fast are you able to run? Because if you need to wait, for data that's coming from your organization that has been cleaned, let's say that, there's still a
Yep.
lot of approval gates that you're going to need to kind of go through. And that's the benefit of doing synthetic data. But then again, when you're doing synthetic data, there's headaches, right? Because one, is it synthetic data that you and your organization would produce? Because it's almost just like, if it's too clean and it's too perfect, it's almost like you're doing, before you fight Mike Tyson, you're doing sparring matches with children, right? And then by the time you like hit the ring, all of a sudden you get hit in the face. It's a totally different punch, So to
True.
me, I think the synthetic data journey has absolutely elevated, within the past few years. And if it's the quality, right, and the velocity of how you get it has never been so much more important compared to the prior years. Because as we start talking about Gen AI or AI in general, right, like I think the where the year is coming is that people are trying to create value now with all these like AI initiatives, and you can't do that without data.
True.
Yeah. And Miguel, I really liked your answer. I think it's very profound. I think people could have generated synthetic data for a long time. Like arguably, just masking the data in a random way is
Yeah.
is generating something that is synthetic. But as we're working with customers on their needs from the synthetic data, then you see customer that they need to actually preserve distribution and behavior of the data. They actually need to have certain rules, validate that certain relationship and other things exist. And just like you mentioned, I think what we are seeing lately is customers that want to basically build, and we actually support them in building a small data language model that actually is able to
Hmm.
generate from a neural network more instances of the data, right? So it's actually really interesting what technology enables customer to do, and I think it drives an unbelievable automation. I want to ask you one more question in that context, because I think one area that we can talk about in synthetic data is that area, like how do you generate data and how AI can help you in
Mhm.
generating data. But I think the other part, and you have done a lot in that area, is about the basically the change in the interface. So
Mhm.
we all have been
Hmm.
here in the revolution of the APIs, but now there is a new type of basically way to communicate. Maybe you can elaborate about the changes you're seeing there.
Oh, absolutely. So this is actually one of like my favorite things, right? Because it talks about kind of like the evolution of how we interact with technology. I think it's
Yep.
like super exciting if you think about it, right? Like in like early 90s, like that's when like the internet is like kind of like coming up. So then, for the most part, people are thinking, okay, how are we going to essentially establish our databases, right? Like, so again, if you think about assembly language, if you think about, non-object oriented programming, right? Like there's just a particular way of you like storing data. And then SQL kind of came into play, and then from there, like people started seeing, okay, like, so we are now running these like SQL databases inside web interfaces, and it's great. It works fine because you have the power of the computer. And at that point, like, traffic wasn't necessarily, because if you think about internet traffic as well, right, that has also evolved. So at that point, what you're running everything on 56K. People were like more patient then, because if you were able to connect to the internet in 5 minutes, right, that's like, oh my gosh, amazing. But if you do that today, right, like connecting to the internet, like, what's that? I'm supposed to be connected to the internet all the time, right? Like, so if you think about the interfaces, the technology, the behavior that we have, it's just like it's molded and like evolved so far out. And then now, when around like 2008, when the mass of like mobile developers started coming into play, people are starting to think, okay, well, a lot of these like SQL databases might not be the best, call it like bucket for us to use. That's when some of like the companies like MongoDB started like coming in, because they're just like, oh, let's do NoSQL. Let's do like, all of these like other, like, now there's these transformation that happens on the data side, on the interface side, right? There's like mobile. And then also at the same time, from the internet perspective, from the architectural perspective, or call it the infrastructure, now we're getting higher band internet. So now we are getting like cable, DSL, et cetera. So then Wi-Fi has become widely available. So then the ingestion of data is just like so much different compared to how it was in the web. So the data needs have also changed. And then now going into cloud tech, right? So then now when you're going into cloud tech and how we store data, how we distribute it. And again, Ronan, like you were like talking about the distribution of data earlier. Like, I mean, it's really crazy how we've evolved from web to mobile to now, like, like a cloud tech, and then the immediate now of AI, right? And I mean, like, AI has been there for a while, but generative AI has like just created this crazy consumption of data. If you think about it, right, like the need for GPUs, the shortage of GPUs, the like all of this like data talk, us like going into quantum, it's never really been a more exciting time, right? And then if you think about the applications of that from a personal level and then from an enterprise level, like, how ready is your enterprise? So I'm sure there's like a bunch of like organizations now that have done the cloud transformation journey, but then you have to kind of ask yourself, how far, how, near were you from the beginning part of that cloud transformation journey, and how is your enterprise kind of like, change, adapted, evolved, and sometimes what ends up happening is the speed of the evolution, sometimes from a human psychology perspective, has not caught
Right.
on. You have people, right, that have moved to cloud, but are still thinking mainframe admin type instructions in their head, because that's the program they have. So you're not necessarily maximizing your investment in cloud tech, cloud storage, like call it like like all of these different things. But then the age of AI also like created so many different ways to fetch data, right? So then you have like people, and I don't know if folks remember when we first started OpenAI did ChatGPT, which, by the way, amazing. Just fun fact that I tell people is it took Spotify 150 days to get to 1 million, right? 75 days for Instagram, and then 5 days for OpenAI to get to like 1 million. So if you think about just the level of data consumption, right, it's amazing. Again, to me, I can always nerd out on this. But then if you think about the fetching, right, of like how folks are like doing it or how they use data, we started with vector databases, right? We started with vector databases, then we started migrating to knowledge graph. So if you think about like, okay, how quick is your organization able to, number one, learn vector databases to consumption? Same goes with knowledge graphs to consumption. It's really interesting. And so to me, again, the whole evolution of technology, consumption, distribution, etc., to me is fascinating. But to me, one of the things that I always look out for, right, is that human element. Because at the end of the day, it's the humans driving this. At least for now, we're not talking Skynet yet, but for now, it's still humans driving this. And I think it's like so exciting to just kind of like see the speed of evolution that we're going through now as, like humankind, right? It's just like the rate of evolution that we're going through. and also at the same time, just these amazing technologies that we have. So, Rabbit, I'm going to go back into your statement earlier. It's never been a more exciting time.
Yes, for sure. I love it.
And Miguel, I want to say, first of all, thank you. There is a lot to unpack from what you just shared, but I think for the audience, I want to repeat one thing because I'm seeing it again and again. You kind of mentioned, when I grew up, like you really would connect with a modem to the internet, and a few minutes of waiting and hearing a beep beep was still acceptable, right? And your example is so perfect. Like today, when I open the laptop, I'm expecting it to be connected, no matter where I am, what am I doing, and so on. And I think it's actually, when it comes to the data and data expectation, I think in the world that I knew about 3, 4, 5 years ago, it would have been acceptable to ask an analytics query and for it to come back the day after. Like they will have like these nightly queries and so on, to be totally acceptable that, okay, I'm setting it up now, by tomorrow I'll know the answer. But with all of this change of the generative technology, I write the question, and if on the other side I'm not starting to see the answer, it looks like, what is wrong, right? Like, exactly. Am I not connected?
What is wrong? Right? Yes, we ask the question, what is wrong with this? Or like, what? There must be an outage.
Yes, and it's actually amazing because you change your expectation from the fact that the data is there and something can run on it and give me an answer tomorrow, into like, no, I want to speak to my data, and I want to speak to the data in real time. And I think that's actually is amazing. And when I talk to some of our customers, and they're actually telling me, hey, we ran our GenAI in kind of early experiment, it worked fine, but then when in real time we wanted to have a conversational interface, we ran something against our data warehouse, and 6 minutes later we got an answer, and all of the users have already dropped like a few minutes earlier, right? And I'm like, no, you need to think that some of the data architecture are different, because the expectations, the human expectations, have completely changed, right? Like, and conversational is a big part of that change.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you're mentioning these like channels too, Ronan, because I keep telling folks, right, like when you're typing versus saying, it's two different things, right? And I think like when you think about like agentic interface, right, or like let's say the beginning parts of conversational AI, right? People were aware and a little bit more forgiving to like a chatbot that didn't necessarily give out the answer if they misspelled something, right? And then it says, oh, I don't know what you're saying. Then people look at what they typed in and they're like, oh my gosh, this is my fault. Like, I'm going to go retype it again. Now, right, like in that channel, it's almost just like, no, like you're supposed to get that. Like, I don't care if it was misspelled. So true. Like, chatbot, you didn't do your job, right? Like, so the funniest thing too is that, again, we're going through these like different interfaces now. So there are, some coders are not even using a keyboard today, right? Like, especially when it comes to agentic coding. So it's just like they're just verbally saying what it is that they want to be able to see. They're essentially managing multiple versions of themselves, which is amazing. And then you have, so again, like when you're going through that cycle, and then now you're going through like requests, right? So it's almost just like, okay, your interface now is speaking. So your thought process for speaking, right, doesn't necessarily come with, like when you're typing, you think about things, you can backspace, you can do all of that. When you're speaking, you can't. It's fluid flow of information, and in the middle of it, you can say, wait a second, no, that's not what I meant. I meant this in the middle of the conversation. So imagine the complexity of data, right, that needs to happen from a conversational perspective, like what Ronan was like mentioning earlier, to something that is typed, and now the input, right, the level of input that we're like picking up come with like different rules now, which is crazy.
I love it. This is something, Miguel, when I talk to developers as well, that's what most of the times what I've been kind of hearing is like the similar sort of thing that, oh, we've been doing things on vibe coding. It is actually real. Why, people and develop, even enterprises now have even roles which are around vibe coding. So it is real. It is something that we are seeing, and this is now also a mindset and a cultural shift that we are kind of seeing. And again, it's exciting times. It is obviously there's always room to make it better. As we've seen in the last 3 years, we've made it better, and it will just get better from here, much more better from here. But that brings me to another interesting question, which I hear all the time, and this is for you, Ronin and Miguel, both of you, which is the challenges that these enterprises and these developers face from pilot to production. And that's, I'm pretty sure, in your role or in your work, you get this question every time, that we are stuck in pilot. Or there's obviously reports like MIT kind of puts out, which is like, oh, 95% of the projects fail. But there's obviously, it's a little bit of clickbait thing there, and it's not that, oh, all 95% really fail. So I would love for you both to unpack a little bit of the challenges from moving from pilot to production. Is the data not ready for Gen AI, or is it like the risk and compliance concerns, or is it like the unclear business value that they're looking for? What is it? Ronin, would you like to start? And maybe Miguel, you can add your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the this is actually, not even $1 billion question. It's actually a multi-billion-dollar
Oh, yeah.
question, which is, how do you get like an amazing Gen AI technology to bring clear ROI? And before I'm answering your question, I do want to say that when I engage with the customer, I'm trying to put a lot of emphasis from the beginning about the business value that is going to be driven, because the fact that the Gen AI technology is cool has been established. It is cool, like it is really amazing what could be done,
True.
but how do you implement that to solve business problem is actually where the ROI is, right? So I think so in my opinion, like I'm recommending, like, let's early discover what it is that we want to achieve. We don't have to achieve everything in day one, but you need to know what it is that you're trying to achieve. I want to address your question now in two parts. I think the first part was like, customers do get stuck between, I'll call it like proof of technologies, proof of other types of proofs, and
Yep.
basically full production. I think in many cases the reason for the challenge, or at least I've seen two main reasons for this challenge. The first one is, you're experimenting with the technology for the sake of the technology without having a clear path to the business value. And then you're
True.
finishing the proof, you're like very, very happy, but like, okay, what do I do with that? You don't have a clear path to the value. The second part, I think, is actually not enough understanding of the architecture that is required to support a real production solution. And here, here you're seeing, I think, people doing something in extremely low scale. When the experiment is done, I'll call it like in the lab is so minimal that when you put it in real life, it actually runs into problem. We just finished like this conversation about data and so on, and you're saying like, okay, what is the response time of a query that I sent into a single table with 20 rows? I can actually get to a reasonable performance. But if I have 10 million customers and I don't know, a few
It's
hundreds of
crazy.
millions of invoices and payments, and I run it across 7 different data sources, and if then the performance is 6 minutes, then like, okay, I needed to rethink this entire thing. And I think for a technology that with such a high promise, with such a big innovation, it does require you to think the architecture. It's not that the same, especially in my area, in the data side, it's not that the same data architecture will just serve you for this phase. Like, it needs to be rethought, and in many cases, you have new needs that needs to be answered.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love it. I love what you mentioned here in terms of, obviously proving that ROI even before understanding the business, I would say context, or the business, what it needs, actually business needs, which is like the most important thing, because you're just thinking about, oh, what am I going to get out of this? Instead of focusing on what actually the problem is. And you want to use everything at full scale instead of just maybe use it for like smaller parts and then get your work done. Miguel, what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah. So number one, Rabbit, this is like the part where I'm just very happy that you invited me for me and not because of like the organizations I've like worked for, etc. Because
Yeah.
now like I can tell you, right, like just based off of like the things that I've heard all across different industries, like just based off of like all the things that I do, like what Ronan is mentioning about scale, right? Like is just one of like the biggest issues. So one of the things that one of the things I do is I advise a bunch of startups, right? So one of the things that Ronan is like mentioning is they create this like project or product, right? That is amazing. It can do exactly what it can do, in like 10,000, 100,000 lines of data, right? Like very
Mm.
complex, amazing. But then you start taking them to enterprises, and then all of a sudden it's like 10 million, 1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion rows of data. All of a sudden it can't do it, right? Because they haven't met like I call it a Goliath, right? Like that big. So it's untested, etc. And this is where, again, a little shameless plug, right? Like for synthetic data on like K2View is that this is why you need a organization to partner with that can generate you like that huge data stack. So as a start, if you're listening to the show right now and let's say you're a startup, you're thinking of starting your own company, this is a very important lesson because this is where a lot of people crash and burn. They have an amazing product but they never tested it at that level. So when they go into an RFP or like essentially they go to an organization and they compete against all the other products, a lot of their products lose because they don't necessarily use the same volume as like what the others are used to. So
Right.
uh, yeah, as like if you're listening as a startup, just know you need to think about scale. And then the one piece too, like when you're thinking about at an enterprise level, and honestly, Rabbit, like even prior to POC, just organizational knowledge, right? So for the most part, as an organization, as a startup, you don't necessarily have a lot of gates to deal with because chances are, if you are the founder and you're building the product yourself, you just have to answer to yourself. But
Yeah.
in an organization, right, like when you are trying to bring on a product, you're probably answering to about like 30 plus, 60 plus, depending on like how big your organization is, like how many gates you have to go through. So just coming in as a call it like a partner or a vendor in an organization. A lot of organizations they started this right in like November 22, 23, I think, like around that time when like Gen AI was
Yep.
just become like a little bit prevalent. Is there's now a checkbox for most organizations? Does your organization use generative AI? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that question, if that box is checked, you go through additional gates, right? That you're going to need
Right.
to do. If you're thinking about it from a risk compliance perspective, there's just more gates, right, for you to run through. Like if you are running a generative AI project. Now, like it doesn't even
Right.
matter if it's generative AI or not. It's just AI. Like you're just going to have to run through a bunch of gates. And then now, like, and this is like all prior to a POC. This is just trying to get that product through the door. So a lot of them kind of like fail and don't necessarily reach the value because at this point, right, maybe other fires start happening. And when the other
Yep.
fires are happening, again, as a person who's a startup trying to go into a particular organization, you might feel like you're not being prioritized because spoiler alert, you're absolutely not being prioritized because there are 10,000 other things that's going on with this executive's life, right?
True.
So the one thing that I keep telling folks is, just continue communicating, right? Don't think that you're being ignored. It's just that it's a very tough space right now to get into. There's so much white noise, there's so much saturation. So that's like pre-POC perspective, right? So then now at like the POC perspective, and then kind of like that enterprise view perspective, there's this MIT report that came out this year that says, oh, a lot of the investment people have been putting in AI and enterprises, you've not really seen like ROI. Yes, because I think there's so many different layers to that onion, right? Like number one, I think let's point out the most obvious, which Ronan had kind of like mentioned earlier, is FOMO, right? You have these leaders and CEOs. It's just like, I don't care what it is, use AI. We have to use AI. So it's just like sticking a cube into a cylindrical hole, right? It's just like it sometimes doesn't work, right? Like, and generative AI is cool, ChatGPT is cool, like all of these like other interfaces, like all of that, all cool. But sometimes that's not your problem as an organization. It's just like sometimes AI isn't what you need. Sometimes it's just really RPA or automation, right? Like, so trying to force AI into an organization that is not ready, right? I mean, you're really not going to get any value out of that. And then also at the same time, you have like people that, again, if you think about the human psychology, there's a whole bunch of like different thoughts in this, but there are people, and you have to really understand this at like the very core of that experience, is that there are people that believe this is existential to them, that they believe that their jobs are going to get replaced, because AI is coming around. So what do people do? Self-sabotage, right? I mean, like, I'm here to defend my job. You're like, you're AI, like you're trying to get in here. Like, it's the same thing, right? As like that psychology. So there are people that are trying to defend their jobs, but then again, they're trying to like diminish some of like the value being presented because they're trying to protect their job. But then again, like then you have like people that's actually actively trying to use AI. They have an organization that can accept AI for the most part. Like, I mean, there's always going to be issues here and there. There's still people, right, in organizations that's going to talk about hallucination, which in all reality, like I tell people, guys, like it's the same thing as anything. It's improvements, right? Like, if you are afraid of hallucination, don't use generative AI, use conversational AI, because conversational AI is more prescriptive than probabilistic. So I tell people, like, it's almost just like trying to drink trying to drink soup with a fork, right? It's just like, it doesn't make sense. It's just like, use the correct tools, right, for the job that you're, or the objective that you're trying to do. And again, just like what Ronan mentioned earlier, think about the goal. Think about the goal of what it is that you're trying to achieve. If you continue keeping that discipline, and you just add generative AI to your tool stack, right, and not replace your entire tool stack with generative AI because you think generative AI can solve everything, that's just organizational education, right? So as an organization, how are you folks creating the normalization of AI and generative AI? Is generative AI still like a scary boogeyman for everyone? Or is generative AI someone that, or like everyone in your organization is using on the side except inside? Or is your organization like all full on AI and everyone's using AI, like, and being orchestrated the correct way as well? I mean, there are these companies, right, that's just like really good in creating or like using AI. Some of them don't really care if AI produces value. They only look at what their company can do. Is that product that they've built producing value? And if the answer is yes, then that's it. Like, AI is just a road, right, that they just use to get there. Now there are folks, right, that kind of like, hey, like, how do we produce value in AI? And that, I think that's been like the question, because it's like, and this is kind of like the piece I kind of at the world, right, in like three pillars anytime I walk into an organization. So it's like revenue or sales, operational cost savings, and then client or teammate experience. So those are like the three giant pillars of benefits that I kind of like look into when it comes to AI. So when you're looking at it from a revenue and sales perspective, how many companies today have generative AI at the forefront, like actually closing sales, closing revenue, or assisting, right? The assisting part, there's
Mhm.
plenty of companies out there, but an actual AI completing the sale, that like it just doesn't kind of make sense. And that's the reason why like that
Yeah.
value isn't necessarily there, because the person assisting AI, guess what, do you think that salesperson will tell like their company, oh, you know what, I'm less valuable because I'm actually being assisted by AI? No, they're not gonna raise, they're just gonna say, no, this is me, like AI has nothing to do with it, right? So again, like, diminished value for AI or AI tools or generative AI. From the operational cost savings perspective, there's this I think it's like Jevons paradox or something like that, which essentially
Mhm.
says that when you are like conserving on a resource, because it costs less, you're going to end up using more, right? Like, so because the spend is, so I don't think that there's a organizational structure in an organization that will raise their hand and say, hey, give me less dollars, please. Right? Like, I think I think a lot of like
Yeah,
either the same or more. Give me the same or more. Right? So
more.
from an
True.
operational cost savings, value only becomes real if you actually, if the folks that you are optimizing, or the process you are optimizing using AI, you actually remove the people doing it that used to do it before, or move them somewhere else, right?
Yes.
So the problem is that, so when you're looking at a lot of like BPO organizations, right, or okay, like we have onshore resources, we're going to shift them to offshore resources. Savings are clear, right? Savings are clear, but chances are, because they see those savings, they spend more on that, and then the spend actually is the same or more, which is again
Right.
just a paradox, right? So, so the idea
Exactly.
here is, you know, with AI, I think there are like folks that either one are not realizing the value because they are not actually getting rid of the resource, whether it's onshore
Hmm.
or offshore, doesn't matter, right? Like, because the spend doesn't decrease, because nothing's being getting rid of, it's just being displaced. So yeah, so from a board perspective, you're not seeing the value because I'm still spending the same. So again, that operational cost savings pillar. And then the last one, it's a little bit more ambiguous. So it's just like, from an experience perspective, it's just like, how can, even today, right? Like, it's almost just like, how do you prove, like, even from like a data perspective? And I'll give an example. Let's say a customer data platform. So let's say you created a customer data platform project in your organization, and then
Hmm.
started, okay, this is now driving more sales because we are getting the data faster, and like people are getting more real-time events, etc. Good luck
Right.
trying to produce, like ROI on that, right? Because the thing is like when someone clicks on, let's say, a interstitial or a push notification, etc., they'll still go through the same process. That
Right.
process had already existed before, and claiming, hey, like all these new people coming in, we are generating the value, not the push notification, right? Otherwise, you're double accounting. So I think these are, again, these are all my own personal opinions, and to me, I feel like across industries, these are like the things where I'm just like saying, well, this is why like the value isn't being seen, is because the value is there, it's just not being reported correctly. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and again, I want to give a positive example. Like we have a customer that actually looked into improving their call center. So they're in the telco business. Call centers is a big cost area, but it's also, I will call it like even beyond the direct cost, it's also an area of customer satisfaction, or this customer satisfaction sometimes, right? And this customer actually have been able to start adopting, I'll call it like an agent human implementation first, where the agent is really the AI agent is supporting a human agent that talks to the customer, but in a process of basically adopting an agentic framework with full automation in the future. And when they've done that, they've been able to start measuring. I think if you come with the right mindset of ROI, like I need to achieve the business value and the ROI, then basically they've been looking into clear measurements, number of calls handled by a single individual per hour, right? If you're able to now increase your productivity by 30%, then you actually achieve the goal. The second part was the time to resolution. How long is the call going on, right? Which actually
True.
is influencing both the number of calls that an individual can do, but it also influences the customer satisfaction. We don't like to spend time waiting for resolution. So that has been a second ROI area. The third ROI area was time for productivity. In the business of call center, you have a very high churn of employees. So you onboard a lot of employees. If somebody can be productive after 1 day of training versus 5 days of training, there is ROI for that as well.
Hmm.
And then it comes to the real customer satisfaction, right? Like how happy the customers are with the service that they have got. So I think organizations that come with that mindset, that actually drive the solution they're building, they will be able to measure and first achieve the ROI, then measure the ROI, or maybe they first measure it and then they achieve it. But I think that is an amazing example. And I think what I can tell the audience is that the Gen AI can actually really drive that value. And maybe I'll give like two quick examples like that, right? If at the minute that you're calling the helpline, the first thing the agent is seeing is an analysis of everything they know about you, summarized into, it's very likely Ronen is calling us because his internet is down right now, as it was a few seconds ago, right? Or alternatively, it says the reason that Ronen is calling right now is because his bill that he received yesterday is 30% higher than his previous bill, right? AI is able to, with the right integration and data architecture, AI is able to go through massive amounts of things they know about you and then summarize it for the agent, so the agent is not starting the conversation cold. That shortens the time of the conversation, bring resolution way faster, increase the customer satisfaction, and also allow the agent to be more productive. If through the conversation, the agent is able to help in complex questions, like if you're getting a question that says, why is my bill this month higher than the bill last month? Okay, I need to open this bill, I need to open that bill, I need to look and compare, etc. GenAI will do a marvelous, job in really comparing two bills and saying like, hey, this is the differences. And then so I think in some places, if you come with the mindset of this is what I want to measure, combination of human agents and AI agents, or maybe it is other things, can actually bring real results.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I love the fact that you mentioned like frontline folks, because that is where I think a lot of the value comes in. And you're absolutely correct too in mentioning how are we measuring value, right? Like, because the thing is that and part of like the thing I keep telling folks is that, especially when it comes to generative AI, the biggest benefit is acceleration. The time to complete something has become so much shorter. So even in the beginning parts of like Chat GPT, etc., I tell people you no longer have to start from zero. You can start with a draft, right? Like, so
True.
you've removed the cognitive burden of going from 0 to 1, and now you can just start at 1, and then you can get to 5 so much faster. So to me, and I love the example too that you mentioned, that because of like call center folks, one of the things I tell folks is like, if you haven't worked at a call center, man, that is the hardest job in the world, because especially if I'm gonna like just give like a little bit of like clapping there for like call center folks, because it's really interesting too. And I'm gonna go into kind of like another call it like the other side of AI here, but from a call center perspective, Roman's like absolutely correct. Like, you don't need to do all this manual work anymore of like gathering all of your client or customer data to be in front of you when the call happens, right? Number one, if you are using your traditional voice assistant, etc., your voice assistant can grab all of that, right, and just say like, hey, like, are you calling because your bill is 30% higher this month? And the person's like, yes, I am. And you can explain, right, in that just voice assistant, hey, here's why. And then the person, you can just be like, oh, well, that makes sense, and then hang up. Or, so that's going to save, just like calls coming into your organization. But let's say the call does come in, and this is for like the call center agent, right? Number one, I need to determine how can I help this person the fastest way possible, because I don't know if folks have worked in call centers before, but you get, just like what Ronan had mentioned, you get graded based off of the time that you complete that call. But then here's the other side of AI. You have bad people now using deep fakes and clones of their voices, right, to go into someone's account or perform account takeovers. So as a customer service person, and this is why I'm saying what they have one of the hardest jobs in the world, is because someone's telling you to run left while looking right. Right? Like, so it's just like someone's telling you, okay, you need to solve this as fast as possible, but watch out for fraudsters, by the way. Right? Like, so again, this is like the part where if you have strong data, and correct implementation of data, and if you're trying to look at kind of like some of the ROI that AI can do, this example that Ronan had mentioned is actually perfect because number one, you can create the productive AI ROI that you're kind of like looking for, and then from the adversarial part of AI. One of the things that you can do is use AI to be able to detect some of the AI things. And what I mean by that is deepfake detection, right? Like, so deepfake detection is another AI tool that you can have in your organization that can stop some of the AI driven attacks that you've been getting. So again, if you're having a hard time, if you're an organization, you're listening to the Rabbit Show, which number one, you should be. And then number two, if you are listening right to us right now, if you're trying to produce value in your organization, look at productive AI and adversarial AI. So when you're looking at the adversarial AI side, and you can look at deepfake detection tools because there's a bunch of fraud right now that's hitting your organization that's AI driven. You can use some of the different AI tools to stop that. And whatever it is that you stop that was not possible today, because I guarantee you the way that you're doing it right now is probably not working. So now you have a nice baseline of what that fraud number is. And when you insert an AI tool that then minimizes that, it's not going to eliminate it. Don't think so. Whoever it is that's selling you something, they are saying they're going to eliminate all fraud. Don't buy from them because they're obviously lying already. It's just going to minimize it. That delta, right, from the top bracket to like the lower, that's AI value right there. But this is like the part where number one, I love that example that Rowan gave just because there's so many different layers to it that we can play with. But when people are having a hard time producing value, for AI, you just really have to know what you're measuring. Because even just that like time completion perspective, right, from the I call it the operational cost savings perspective, if your average handle time for a phone call is called like 3 minutes and now is down to 1 minute, number one, your people can take more phone calls. Your workforce now has multiplied. But then number two, don't forget the customer effect, right? Of what that 3 minute to 1 minute means to loyalty, retention, etc. So you're going to need to figure out how to measure that. That's not Rabbit or Ronan's job or my job today. That's your job. Like for you listening, you figure that one out, and then you can come talk to us and ask us questions.
True. I love it. I love these insights.
Yeah, and Miguel, I think you mentioned one more thing that I want the audience not to lose, which is I think in many cases we're looking into the AI as how do we do the things that we do today faster, better. I think you touched upon that, but I think you mentioned something, and I just want to kind of repeat it. And in many chances, AI is actually giving us the ability to change from reactive to proactive. And I think that wave is coming, right? Like not everybody is already seeing that, but your ability to be proactive is actually at the next level of game changing. I think it all is connected to the fact that GenAI does offer every one of us a huge opportunity for automation, and then automation together with proactive is actually that's going to make like problems will get solved even before you actually notice that you need to deal with them, rather than just being handled faster, right? Yeah. But step by step, and I think ROI by ROI. Yes,
absolutely. And again, like we're talking about the value of AI, one of the things I keep telling people is essentially when you're fixing problems, there's 3 pillars: remediation, detection, prevention. Remediation is the most expensive, right? So if you are using AI tools and going from remediation to detection, or even remediation to prevention, just like what Ronan mentioned, that's AI value right there. So that's kind of like the things where you need to be able to really figure out what your measurement system is today, and also evolve your measurement system, right? That is how you measure, AI value properly. It's not just through a lot of the stuff that we're doing today. There's a lot of new things. We have to evolve just like our technology.
100%. I love this. So from reactive to proactive, that also brings me to my next question, which is about the future. And since we are around 2026, and I think when we release this, it will already be 2026. So I'm kind of curious to hear from you both about maybe I'm not even gonna say like in next 2 to 3 years because it's way too long. Maybe in the next 6 to 8 months is what we should be always focusing on. How do you see what trends should we be ready? What should enterprise leaders look out for? What should they be ready? Because I know you all have shared tons of great insights today. But just in 2 lines, if you all want to summarize that, okay, enterprise leaders should be ready for this, what would it be, Miguel?
So I would say, yeah, like there's a few things that I think the topic we're talking about right now, there's going to be more focus from the enterprise perspective, more focus
Mhm.
in being able to measure and show AI value. I think that's number one. Number two, I think organizations need to truly be ready for MCP and A2A services, because I think a lot of organizations, I think a lot of like platforms that the organizations are using today already have those in place. Like especially if you're using a platform that rhymes with jails force, right? Like anyway, like they are building a lot of things already. So the thing that I would tell folks, especially for enterprises, my prediction 6 to 8 months, I think organizations should focus on MCP A to A in like that integration, and look at this from the technological evolution of when we went from screen scraping to aggregators. Like when we went
Yep.
from scraping to aggregators, we were able to get more data, use more data, retain more data, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the same for like MCP and A2A, right? And then the third bit is honestly, Rabbit probably has nothing to do with enterprises, but to me, I think like in the end of 26 or early 27, we will have the first company in existence. And I'm talking globally, there will be one company in existence where it'll be a unicorn company but only has one employee.
Oh wow, I love it.
Yeah, I think that's gonna happen. And I'm absolutely holding my breath for that.
Yes, 100%. What I'm hearing is AI value, MCP integration, A to A, be ready for that. And then obviously one company, one enterprise company that will be a $1 billion company, maybe, and there'll just be one employee.
Yes.
If whenever that happens, we are doing another episode with Miguel just talking about this and how did this happen, and with Ronin as well, because we have it on record and we three are talking about this. So when that happens, we all three have to get back.
Oh, we have to. We
And
have to.
we have to have that party. Ron, what do you think? What are your thoughts about 2026, maybe next 6 to 8 months?
I think that the level of innovation in AI and this train of like innovation cannot be stopped. So if you're sitting on the side and you're like, hey, is this am I going to be on that train? Like you better be on that train, because it's actually it's amazing. Like when we started 2025, I still remember like it was really literally a month or so before that MCP has been announced. Today it's hard to find an application that doesn't have an
Yeah,
MCP interface, right?
agreed.
It's so and I think it's just one example. So I think this train is running and running fast. If you ask me what will happen in 2026, I think this is the time that organizations that really want to leverage the AI capabilities, the growing innovation, they will basically start focusing on their data, because the data, what they know, Miguel was talking about customer data platform, etc. What they know about the customer, what they know about their own products, what they know about their own services, that's what's going to differentiate. That's going to be the multiplier that multiply the AI capabilities and really bring the value. So I think the level of focus on data and data that can support the AI new requirements, I think that's going to be in the center of 2026. Not to take anything away from the unbelievable amount of innovation that will happen at that time. I think I'm with Miguel on the fact that there are big companies that are smaller than ever before that will reach 1 billion. I don't know if a company of one, but I think you'll find very, very small companies that actually reach reach unbelievable valuation, but even more than that, it actually serve an unbelievable amount of customers. And I think that's definitely is gonna happen. But I think that'll be the. I'll focus my prediction on data, not on necessarily investments.
Yeah, that's awesome. And maybe that company could be K2View as well very soon. Y'all are a well lean team. Who knows? Ronin. So
Yes.
Miguel and
So
I are kind of
we're
waiting for
definitely
that party.
after the billion-dollar valuation and more, but we will try to do it with a few hundreds of employees, not with one. We promise.
That's fantastic. All right. I know we're almost time, but then I have one last question for both of you, and I promise this is the last one. If folks want to reach out to y'all, which is the best platform to reach out, and if they want to follow, I know you both of you are at different conferences. You all do a lot for the community, and if there's anything that you all want to plug, your book or the different articles that you all put out, and where can they meet you? Tell us about that. Ronin, if folks want to connect, know more about K2View, learn everything, what should they do?
Yeah, so please, Ronin.Schwartz at k2view.com, Ronin Schwartz in LinkedIn, like very active, and hopefully I'll be on multiple Ravi shows this in 2026 as well.
We can't wait.
So please, I think reach out, and I would love to continue the conversation. I do want to use this as also a plug to say a lot of the innovation is happening when you partner. Like I think K2View partnership with KeyBank and I'm really looking forward to collaborate even with Miguel directly. I think there is a lot of exciting things to do. So also to the broader audience, come innovate together with us.
Awesome. Miguel?
I can't wait, Ronan. So number one, like a best platform to reach me at is LinkedIn. So just search Miguel Navarro, look for my face with the red t-shirt and like kind of like a circle like around, like that's me. Yeah, I mentioned to folks too, like yeah, I love to connect with people. I typically get a lot of requests for folks about like career advice or just strategy for some of their startups, etc. Like I love talking about that, and I love getting involved, especially when it comes to the community. Especially if you're Filipino, like trying to break into the tech space. Like definitely, I'm born and raised from Philippines, so I love giving back to my community. So please feel free to reach out. I would say to the one event that there's multiple events that I'm scheduled for 26, but the one that I think will be very impactful, especially if you're thinking about AI and data, is the Chief AI Officer Exchange. So
Nice.
so I'm going to be the chairperson for that event. And if you are thinking of attending, please let us know. We do try to keep that event very small because the note that we want to leave there isn't about like like grabbing as many people, right? It's about having meaningful conversations and connections. So if that is your vibe, please reach out to me. I can give you more details on that. But that's in 26. I think it's around like May 12th to 13th. So go and reach out and we can connect there. And also at the same time for everyone else, right? Like if you're going to a conference, I'm essentially I do a lot of speaking, etc. If you do see me in a conference, please feel free to tap me on the shoulder and just like introduce yourself. I love doing that. I get a lot of people doing that with me. So please don't be shy. I love conversations.
Amazing. Miguel, Ronin, such a pleasure having you both on the Rabbit Show. And for everyone who's attending, you know where to catch up with them. Obviously, both are on LinkedIn. Miguel will be at Chief AI Officer Exchange USA version as well from May 12th to 13th. So feel free to reach out to him. And, obviously, it's more like an invite only, small AI officers, small, obviously all a small group of AI officers coming together and obviously talking about some interesting innovations that are happening in the space. And also feel free to reach out to Ronin and talk about GenAI, customer service in GenAI, which is what Ronin always specializes in. And whenever I meet him, he has some interesting insights. But we'll keep the conversation going. Thanks, guys, once again for visiting the Rabbit Show. And until next time, see you again.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.